So I heard from some comments earlier that I probably need to give a little explanation of how I plan out my sermons each month. So not only do I try to tie it into the Soul Matters themes of possibility when I can, but I also wanted to focus on income inequality this month, primarily because my other congregation, Stevens Point, has chosen that as a year-long focus for them, and they want to really engage in the community on that. So I thought, well, you know, I think we are just as concerned. But you should also know, so I do 2 sermons a month and use them twice, once in each congregation. And I purposely try to do one of them, and it's usually the first one is more internal. So it'll be more internal ethically or spiritually or internally within these walls in helping to build beloved community. And then usually the second one has more to do with the macro issues and what's going on in the world. So if you looked carefully at my 2 descriptions of the service, this is the one that's more internal and about this community, and the one 2 weeks from now will be more on the macro level and then talk about that. So just to kind of set that straight. So if you didn't want this sermon, I guess you can get up and leave now. It's okay. There goes that. That was great timing. So I wanted to start today with talking about a class I took. So a year ago in January, I was lucky enough to be part of something that the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, offers. By the way, this is part of what your dues go to help support ministers. Every other year they put on this seminar or a conference focused on excellence in ministry. And of course it's always somewhere warm, California or Florida. This happened to be in Florida. But hundreds of ministers, Unitarian Universalist ministers from all over the world come and spend a week on one topic. And they have all these speakers come in, and they have a curricula that there's, I think, about 20 different things you can pick. And then you pick one, and that's what you focus on for the week. So this was my first time to go to it, and I picked entrepreneurial ministry because, believe it or not, I think that's what I'm doing. I've always felt called to be the first minister to historically lay-led congregations in Northeast Wisconsin, and I think you all have done a great job over the years, like inventing yourselves, and I believe, well, now there's a different mix in play with me coming in, and you know, it's a different decade and that kind of thing. So we're always reinventing ourselves, and what is ministry today, and how do we appeal to people given that everything's constantly changing. So I took entrepreneurial ministry, and one day, in the middle of the week, we talked about alternatives to churches, to traditional churches that millennials in particular are drawn to. And it wasn't that it was religious per se, but what we were using for a litmus test is 3 criteria. Where are they building community? Where are they feeling that they're finding purpose and meaning in life? And then one that kind of surprised me is, where are they finding an egalitarian kind of community, where it's not hierarchical or they feel intimidated by somebody else in the group, that they can just feel comfortable being there. And there were 3, this is the Jim Coakley summary of the information, so don't quote me if you will, but there were basically, it boiled down to 3 different kinds of places. So some of my friends are even involved in this, and it's this coffee house ministry. And so there is no big building, there's no overhead, there's just this, every Wednesday night we meet at such and such a coffee house in the back, and we might light a chalice, we might not, we might have a reading, we might not. It actually sounds a lot like a chalice circle to me, but they have a topic and then they close. And it usually has a leader, but that's it. There is no singing, there's no organization like this, but it's enough to build small communities. In fact, my friends that are involved in this say that they really don't want the group to get any bigger than 10, and if they do, they start another one on a different night. So they really are focused on this small group kind of ministry. So then one that's a little bit further away from ministry was service organizations. From what we heard, there's a big influx of particularly millennials very involved in service, like Habitat for Humanity or helping out at the soup kitchen or something like that. And they find that you can, if you do it regularly and it's the same group of people, once again, you're building community. It helps you feel like you've got a purpose in life. You're helping some people very directly. You can see the results. and it's usually very egalitarian, because who cares if somebody drove up in a Beamer? They still have to slop the soup out onto the trays, or they've got a hammer or nails and they're working on a house. So it just met all those criteria, and that's where they're finding it. So it's not necessarily a spiritual type of thing in this case, but it's definitely something that's feeding their soul. Then the last one really surprised me. It was fitness centers. And it wasn't the kind of fitness center, like I belonged to the Y forever with my family, and then there's kind of these, those of you that have been around for a while, the kind of hoity-toity fitness centers from the 80s and 90s where it was more about how you looked than really what you were doing kind of place. It's a new kind of fitness center. I'm not going to use any brand names here because I don't really want to plug a specific one, but it's all places where people were saying, there was a quote that said, my friends at the fitness center, when my father died, I got more people reaching out for me there than the church I've grown up in. And I'm like, wow, that's telling. And I'm like, that surprised me, and I found it kind of amazing. And I'm like, well, at some point I'm going to have to check this out. Well, lo and behold, about March, April, a good buddy of mine up in Appleton had joined one of these fitness centers, and of course convinced me to try it out. And I don't. Once I retired from Kimberly-Clark, I used to work with him. I don't see him very much, so I'm like, okay, this is one way we can see each other. So I joined and tried it out, and it is not like anything I've ever been to before. If you go to, I went to a lot of classes at the Y, and typically I would show up, we'd start right on time, and you do your thing, and you're sweating, and then you're done, and you go to the locker room, and maybe you stand around and talk in the locker room, but I don't know, that's not really a guy thing so much. But so I didn't really feel like I got a lot of community in that, but I did get a good workout. Well, this is organized completely differently. There's an owner, his name's Sam, and he's also the coach. And the first there's hour-long classes. And the first 15 minutes you show up, you might be doing some gentle stretching, but it's all socializing. He's talking about his family, and everybody's chiming in, and everybody knows each other, and they do all kinds of things, like the 5:30 a.m. class he takes videos of, and he always posts on the Facebook group, and everybody's commenting on what everybody's doing and cheering people on. And over the holiday, they have chalkboards all over the gym, and people write things like messages to each other or their personal records, or at the holidays, they wanted people to post those cards. Like, I'm still old-fashioned, I send Christmas cards, but most people have migrated towards this. I'm going to do a montage of all the photos from the year and post it up there. So this is how everybody can get to know everybody's families. Oh, and speaking of families, I tend to work out at the 8:30 class, so it's all the stay-at-home parents with little kids. And they come with the car seat and they suspend it from the pull-up bar, and it's going up and down, and the stroller's there. And when I'm working out, the dog's coming and giving me kisses while I mean, it's quite a place. So it definitely really builds community. And sometimes they even write up extracurricular activities, like, let's go bowling on this night. I mean, it's something else. From a purposeful perspective and bringing meaning in your life, it is clearly set up to have people have fitness be a very central part of their lives. They take it very seriously, but it's to have fun and community. So I already talked about the community part, but when the workout starts, they crank the tunes like unbelievably, and it's a lot of fun. You just feel like you're almost dancing while you're doing all this stuff. But egalitarian is really the reason I wanted to bring it up to you today. The first time, I was very reticent to walk into this place because I was one of those kids in junior high that was not in the jock crowd by any stretch of the imagination, and actually teased relentlessly by them and intimidated. And I'm like, this seems like a bro culture. I don't know that I want to walk into this place. And sure enough, when I got there, you saw the super muscle dudes climbing a rope up to the ceiling and back down just to warm up. And this one woman, she does a headstand next to the wall and then does her push-ups that way. I'm like, who are these people? Yeah, I consider myself reasonably fit, but these people were over the top. And so I was pretty intimidated at first. But then then I realized it kind of broke into three sets of groups. You got these crazy people that this seems to be what their life is all about. And then you got people like me that I'm not going to die, but it's going to be a stretch to make it through the workout. And then you've got a lot of people that look like they haven't been off the couch in years, and they're just starting out. But the way they do these workouts, first they tell you the intense part, and I'm talking workouts like this is Olympic weightlifting. I always have a barbell in my hand with some weights on it, and I'm doing lunges or something, and then that's just the first part. Then you've got these crazy workouts like the other day I did 150 lunges. So they're always modified. So you can do the crazy intense stuff, or you can do something a little less than that, which is what I choose to do. Or frankly, you can just lay on the floor and move, and that's enough. I mean, and it doesn't matter. And when I joined last summer, you had workouts that were running, and I was almost always the last person in the run, and I was lapped by all the fast people that I could be their father, right? But they would always give me a high five and cheer me on, and it's the kind of place where everybody waits for everybody to get done and cheer them on, and you know, people that would have been extremely scared of in junior high come up and say, hey, great, you got, you know, what you were shooting for, you made it. And so it's just this amazing place that I never expected to find. And it's very scrappy. It's in this giant garage, there's no fancy stuff, and it just cracks me up every time. But having been in that experience made me realize why this was listed as one of these entrepreneurial ministry kind of places. Because people are coming there, they're finding their community, they have a purpose in their life, and it's just they don't feel intimidated, and you get support unlike anywhere else I've seen in most places, except for churches, because I grew up in churches. So the reason I spend so much time talking about this crazy gym is because it's that kind of atmosphere that I hope that we are fostering or can foster in our fellowships. No, I'm not expecting you to do wall push-ups, but that kind of people come in and they feel welcome. I think most people that are visitors and then end up joining, you know, they do their little testimonial and often say, I walked in and I knew I'd find my home. And I hope that that continues, but I hope it's not a superficial thing. I mean, you're all a friendly bunch, and you go talk to people when they're having coffee the first couple of times they're here, but I hope that then that continues as people stay and you know, set down roots in this place. It should be a place where you're always feeling welcome, you're always finding that purpose in your life, and it's a place where you can depend on the other folks when you need them. And it's a place focused, frankly, on possibilities. The gym was about the possibility of being more fit than you ever have been in your life. And this place, going back to that theme, is this creating people of possibilities, that we're always encouraging each other to be the best that we can be, or to get through whatever we're getting through in life, that we're all here to help each other. So that's why I spend so much time on that gym and talking about alternative ministry. But then I get into classism and income inequality. And so to me, that's a possibility inhibitor, if you want to call it that. We got some statistics earlier about the growing income inequality, and my sermon later this month will go more into detail about that and ideas for solutions. But it's all that concentration of wealth, which is what you are focused on, and you have much better statistics than I have from my book. But then it's also we all have heard these over and over again, that the minimum wage, or right near the minimum wage, the folks that do most of the jobs in America, the spending power of that is about the same as it was in the 70s, if not less. And so it just opens up this wide gap between the haves and the have-nots, and it makes it really ripe for classism. So what is classism? I wanted to make sure I had it accurate, so I went to dictionary.com. It's a biased or discriminatory attitude based on distinctions made between social and economic classes. So you could say rich or poor, but frankly, you would say that there's many more divisions in between. Why should we care about it? Because I think we have mission and vision statements right outside the door there that talk about this being a very diverse, very welcoming, inclusive environment. And we have set ourselves up to be an example to the surrounding community on how this can be done well. So when you walk in the doors, I mean, we talk a lot about racism, we talk about heterosexism, or, you know, anti-LGBTQ stuff, we talk about ableism, but classism, frankly, is one of these insidious things in our society today that we tend to hide. We tend not to talk about it. It's embarrassing if you don't have a lot of money and you feel like everybody around you has more than you, and I think it's something that we don't really pay enough attention to. And I just wanted to bring that up today and talk about how we interact in this fellowship with each other. So, I wanted to give examples of our fellowship versus this gym that now I've praised as the gold standard, right? So community building. I think we're very friendly here. What I found is a lot of friendliness, a lot of encouragement. I think we go out of our way to help people try to get involved. I mean, Tracy and I talk every week. If you look at all these announcements and all the things we have going on here and the ways that you can get involved, I think that's very much part of our community building. Purposeful. Well, that's kind of a duh. I mean, we're a faith-based organization. We're all about helping each other, finding meaning and purpose in life. We all have individual journeys. None of us have the same journey, but that's okay. That's our theology. But it's all very purposeful. But egalitarian, I think this is one of the areas we could probably do better. And I think this is sort of endemic with Unitarian Universalism. So I sat carefully. I had a whole list of a lot of examples, and I narrowed it down to 2. And they might rub a few people a little wrong, but I'm just going to throw them out there, and I welcome the discussion after the service to talk about it. So the first one of them is our choice of social justice activities, but I actually narrowed it down to just one, because I think many of the people in this room really found each other because of environmentalism. It's one of the things, I mean, I'm married into a very strong environmentalist family. I'm environmentalist as well, so I'm right there with you on all of this stuff. But I wonder sometimes if the way we do environmentalism is a little bit elitist. So think about this. The statement would be, do we care as much about the air and the water and the earth and cleaning up pollution as we do about the people that are impacted by that? And so here's my example. It's two-sided. So you have, a toxic waste site in town. Of course, we want to try to get rid of it. We don't want to have anybody live next to it. And it's our goal to eliminate it and not produce it in the first place, right? But I don't think we spend a lot of time talking or doing anything about the people that live near it, that suffer from it. Or think about climate change. There's climate change is here, it's already happening, and I think we spend a lot of time trying to still reverse it and do things and help people live lifestyles that will lower our carbon imprint on the planet. But we don't really spend a lot of time thinking about the results of people like that are going to live in the floodplains as we get more and more water in this part of the country. Or this is the glaring example from the last election. So we moved away from using coal as a source. And so there are a lot of people who are going to lose their jobs. And I know we feel for them, but I don't know that we spend a lot of attention or time thinking about, well, who's going to take care of them? We kind of think, well, the government will, or they'll find other jobs somewhere or something. I mean, this is just my attitude of what I feel we say, as opposed to, should it be something that we're involved in both sides of it, helping to eliminate climate change and helping the people that are impacted by it, one way or the other. So that's kind of a big high-level thing, but another one that I think is very practical and I think is hidden from a lot of us is how we do meetings around here and the expectations sometimes included with those. And so what I'm talking about is we're a friendly bunch. And I notice that often we have a group that maybe we meet in each other's homes and we circulate through each other's homes, or we go out to eat and go to different restaurants and that kind of thing. And if you stop and think about it, I know in the congregations that I serve that there are people that are one step away from living on the street. They're probably couch surfing with relatives and friends because they've lost their jobs, had some medical bills, and are barely getting by. I know of a family that was living out of their car the whole summer because they didn't have any other place to go, but yet they were part of the congregation. And they didn't let anybody know except the minister what was going on with them. And so when you think about, I'm inviting you to my home because it's a beautiful home and I'm very proud of it and I want to be gracious and warm and have people come, if you're in that part of the classism, the class of society, you're going to be pretty intimidated to show up in an environment like that, even if you think your home is pretty modest. And then what are you going to do when you think it's your turn? I can't really invite people to my car or the homeless shelter or something like that. So my suggestion would be that we have all the meetings here instead. We have this beautiful space, and I would like the neighborhood to see that this place is bustling with activity. We're all really busy, but I think a lot of it happens outside of this space, and it would be better for everyone if it was here. And then with regard to eating out, a personal example, a dear friend that we grew up with, she had some health issues and hard times, and my wife and their friends, they'd all go out to lunch every so often, and she kept making excuses. She was sick, or she'd come and say she was already full and have a cup of coffee, and finally she just was honest and said, I can't afford it. I cannot. And they weren't even going to extravagant places for lunch, but they just were completely oblivious to where she was financially, because she'd always had some money to spend before. And so I don't ever want to put people in those kind of places. So one thing that we had experimented with, and it was pretty successful in Stephen's point, is when we had a meeting and it involved food, instead of going out to a restaurant, we could still bring in food. Sometimes it was pizza, sometimes it was sandwiches. Sometimes people ordered off a menu and we'd bring it in, but we didn't make people pay a specific amount. We had just a goodwill offering basket, and people could put in whatever they thought they could afford. And you know full well that people that have more income to spend usually pay it forward and will put in maybe double what they think their lunch is worth because they know they're paying for somebody else, so that somebody else can just put in $1 or 50 cents, or maybe just walk by the basket completely. And that's the kind of place that I think we really want to build. And what we found in that case is you always got more money than the bill was from wherever you brought in the food, because we are a very, very generous people. And so then you avoid that whole classist kind of thing where everybody can feel welcome. So those are my two examples. I know I'm probably rubbing a few people wrong on those, but it just is something that I've had in the back of my mind that I'm not sure we're aware of, that it's a wee bit elitist when we do some of those things. So to end my sermon today, I wanted to go back to the gym and the effort that they take to be really welcoming, especially this whole egalitarian thing. How do we make everyone feel that same thing here? Because we ultimately want to live out our mission and vision that this fellowship should be a place where classism and income inequality are recognized and acknowledged. Let's not just push it under the carpet. We want people to acknowledge that they're having trouble, but then we mitigate it. And we create a space that's radically welcoming and inclusive, even in socioeconomic status as well. Because only then can we be on this journey of possibility and community together. Thank you. Amen. Now, as I said,